The Conservatives called for political backup in Ontario this weekend. Toronto suburbs have always been a critical battleground. Kathleen Wynne helped campaign for Trudeau in 2015. But there's been no sign of Doug Ford. So who did Andrew Scheer invite to come campaign? Alberta's Jason Kenney.
Our country needs a prime minister of whom we can be proud.
The Alberta Premier campaigning in Ford country, but without Doug Ford.
Doug Ford.
Justin Trudeau has been trying to link Andrew Scheer to the Ontario Premier as a way to attack the Conservatives and scare undecided voters. Why? Well, Ford has slumped in the polls in Ontario, and Scheer's party needs to win big there if it wants to form the next government. Let's just say Scheer hasn't done a photo op with Ford for months now. But Jason Kenney, well, he's a Conservative brand that Andrew Scheer wants to advertise. He's popular in Alberta. He's a national figure who makes national headlines, a political ally, and a friend. Kenney is even godfather to one of Scheer's children.
If you want a federal government that's focused on reducing the cost of living rather than increasing it, then vote for Andrew Scheer's Conservatives. If you like being embarrassed on the world stage and half the time when you look at the newspaper, then vote for the incumbent.
And now, Kenney is in Ontario, traveling, he says, on Scheer's dime, a provincial premier who's deeply involved in the federal campaign. But Jason Kenney isn't only using his brand to advance Scheer's interests.
It's clearly in Alberta's interest that we have a change in the federal government to a government that respects this province and that will help us grow again.
This week, Kenney promised Alberta's Energy War Room will be up and running in a few weeks. The $30 million taxpayer-funded campaign will be based in Calgary with offices across North America and around the world, part of a fight-back strategy to advance Alberta oil. For more, I'm joined by Chris Turner. He's a journalist who covers energy and climate change issues and is the author of The Patch. He's in Calgary. So, Chris, you've been covering Kenney and the oil patch for a long time. You're not a big fan of Kenney, but obviously Andrew Scheer is. What do you think is behind this Ontario campaign?
I think the Kenney, Jason Kenney showing up at this point in the campaign probably means, Andrew Scheer's not connecting with suburban voters in Ontario quite the way Jason Kenney used to when he would campaign for Stephen Harper. And so I think it looks certainly like he's been brought in to try and focus some attention on particularly energy issues and some of the other economic issues and that Andrew Scheer has not been able to get attention with.
I can't remember another provincial premier leaving his province to campaign for somebody who wants to be prime minister. It seems unprecedented. I mean, what is this about? Is this about helping Andrew Scheer, hurting Justin Trudeau? What's it really all about?
Well, I think probably absolutely top priority is hurting Justin Trudeau. Certainly, Jason Kenney is, possibly the most hostile public figure of any political stripe to Trudeau. He's made no mistake, absolutely no, left absolutely no doubt that he considers it a priority of Alberta from a government point of view to get Trudeau out of office, and certainly sees Trudeau as an enemy of Alberta energy, sees Trudeau as an enemy of a number of his goals. I think another piece of this, though, certainly is Jason Kenney, seems to harbor some federal ambitions of his own and enjoys the opportunity to put himself in the national spotlight again, both to highlight some of the big issues that he feels that Alberta is not getting the attention it deserves, but also I think to be seen as someone who is ready to return to the federal stage if needed.
Kenney has said that in a few short weeks he is going to launch what he calls a war room, this fight back strategy, $30 million in Alberta funds to go after what he calls foreign funded radicals who are hurting the oil patch. You're not a fan of that. He says he's protecting jobs. What do you think is wrong with that?
I think it's a misread, first of all, of the nature of the problem. The other thing, though, is that this is not what was missing from Canada's national energy conversation. There was formerly not enough defense of the industry. The Liberals bought a pipeline to keep that project from failing. The industry has not gone without defenders. It's that the entire global market for oil and gas is shifting radically, and the investment climate has changed completely. This is not a case of just needing a much more ferocious cheerleader or defender. This is a very, very different environment.
Kenney already has an inquiry in place about, some people are calling it the un-Albertan activity snitch line. People are being asked to call in and report foes of the oil patch. There's been some jokes about it, but there's a lot of jobs at stake here, are there not?
Well, certainly there are, and certainly I think, the idea of this snitch line, you have to assume, is for those people who are concerned about their jobs and the economic position of oil and gas these days, that it gives them a sense that activity is happening and, inquiries are being made. I think it's, absurd, though, to think that, again, what was missing from the conversation about, the future of the Canadian energy industry was people saying their neighbors aren't, pro-oil enough, that was the missing piece, and that's really going to change the sort of national mood toward pipelines or the international investment climate for oil sands investment. This is not, leading anywhere that's particularly productive, I don't think, for the energy industry or anyone else.